Hello and welcome to the Dark Crystal podcast, Dream Space. I'm your host, Sydney, and welcome back to Beyond the World of Thra. Today, we are joined by our friends again. It has been far too long, all the way from Thra to Middle Earth, and now to worlds of their own making, which is so delightful to see. Please welcome back our friends, Will Matthews and Jeffrey Addiss. How are you guys, and how awesome is it to be you right now?
It's awesome to be us because we get to see you right now. It's good to see you again. It's nice to be back and see some familiar faces, even as we, go into different worlds. It's such a pleasure.
And I mean, like I said, worlds of your own making. And the last time I saw you was actually at the Dark Crystal Great Conjunction, where we shared the stage for our trivia show. And I do believe the puppeteers wiped the floor with you.
Wiped the floor with us. Yeah, I remember that well.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're being humble about that, because I would never dare lessen the impact of having been, had wiped the floor.
It's not our job to know things. It's our job to make things up.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's what we do.
It was amazing. So much fun. So nice to see y'all back. And of course, the reason we are here today, the reason we are celebrating, lighting all the fireworks, of course, is that you have a brand new series premiering on Netflix this week, I believe on Thursday of this week. And I had the great honor of getting to binge it ahead of time. And so I'm so excited. Congratulations on the Boroughs. What an accomplishment. Okay, I gotta say, you're the showrunners. This is your baby. Let's just dive right in talking about the process. How was the seed of this story planted? Where did the story of the Boroughs start? Was it a concept that was given to you? Was it entirely your idea and you came to Netflix? Take us to the start.
It started with because of the Dark Crystal. So that's why it feels...
Yeah.
It turns out Matt and Ross Duffer also liked the Dark Crystal. And so they got their, overall deal, right? So now they have a company at Netflix and they can start making stuff. And I guess they just liked the Dark Crystal. And so they just kind of called us. And we jumped on a Zoom and we started talking about TV shows and movies and things that we liked and the Dark Crystal a bunch. And then at some point they said, do you have an idea for a show?
Isn't that amazing the way that works out? That, I mean, it's kind of like the way the crystal infects, but in a good way.
Yeah.
It, just creates nerds far and wide who just want to make more stuff, right?
We did the dark and then we got to do the heartening or something just to have a nice version.
Age of Resistance is such a specific show. I mean, it's a huge puppet show. It's so weird. And the people who love it. And it turns out
weird.
And it turns out some of the people who love it are the Duffer Brothers.
You know, and last night, did I tell you?
No, with who?
My driver. Coming home from our premiere. We did our premiere last night. We do the whole premiere.
I was going to ask about that. How was that?
It was great. But you're exhausted and you get home and, my wife, he's opening the door and helping her out and he just turns and he goes like, I just got to say, I'm sorry. I love the Dark Crystal. And I was really angry that it didn't get another season. And so it was very sweet that even on the night we're premiering our new show, there's still people who love the Dark Crystal.
Yeah.
It has been so great to see the community united and just nerding out together over the course of the last several years. The way that Age of Resistance reignited this fan base that has always just sort of been lying in wait for another reason to be excited you owe a lot of that to yourselves, and we owe a lot of that to you. And it has been so, so satisfying, not only as, a fan of the world of the Dark Crystal, but also just to be fans of you guys and to have enjoyed how often we've been able to chat and cross paths and how amazing those conversations have always been. It's so satisfying to see you get to have your names on the forefront with names like the Duffer Brothers, who of course are household names now, and you are well on your way to that.
Fellow Dark Crystal fans. But
exactly.
That's
what
so
a
nice
partnership.
of you to say. It's, because you're right. I mean, we've been playing in other people's sandboxes for a while. We always talk about it as attending other gardens, right? We get to come in.
Yeah. Which is fun. I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's childhood dreams to work on Dark Crystal or Lord of the Rings. I mean, but it's kind of wild to have someone say, what's your thing?
Right. dare I say, it's not just that you've been playing in sandboxes, you've been expanding on other people's sandboxes and making the sandboxes bigger places to play in, and sort of by extension, inviting others to come in and add on to the sandbox as well. And so, it's created this community and this inspiration of like, we can jump in as well, not just play, but also create new spaces as well. And that's just, it's very, very inspiring to see. So now, looking here at where you are now to build your own sandbox from scratch, what were the first steps of that? Was that a collaborative process between you and the Duffers, or were you just told like, go do your thing, check back with us when you have stuff to pitch?
It was really that.
Yeah.
I mean, for one thing, they're busy.
Yeah.
They were making the biggest show in the world.
Yeah.
And so, but also they understand that it wouldn't be our sandbox if it was always too many people in there with us. And so it was really, in the earliest days, me and Jeff talking about the stuff we love, the stuff we want to see and do and want to see actors do. Mm-hmm. And the idea was, let's do a show that we could only do with the Duffer Brothers behind us because they're so powerful. And so it was just that earnest and genuine. And so we came up with a show that we thought would be hard to sell, and it turns out people liked it.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right.
Fascinating. So to be told, you bring up an interesting point that it's, instead of having to bring something to table to the pitch and hope somebody likes it and gives you the green light, you're basically saying you've had a green light and you were like, let's use this as an excuse to
we didn't have a green light. I want to be clear. What we had was like somebody saying, hey, we liked this other thing you did. Do you have any other ideas? Sure. Everything is constantly sort of checked. So we come back and we pitch Hillary and Matt and Ross the sort of idea of the show. And then you talk about it and they make suggestions and you come back and you pitch it again. And then you go and pitch it to Netflix and they have some thoughts or suggestions and you go off and write a pilot. What was amazing about this process is that it was pretty smooth at every step, which is so rare. Like, as these things go, it went really fast. So I think we like talked to the Duffers, made some changes in the pitch. 3 weeks later,
if that,
we pitched Netflix. They take it on the Zoom. Mm-hmm. I don't even think we were in person. We were on Zoom, and they took it in the Zoom. We wrote a draft, the first draft, and then we got the green light off of that draft, which is incredibly fast.
Yeah.
And it really probably a testament more to the Duffers than us. But yeah, it was just this very organic process, and so it just grew fast. Right? Because it's like that thing that like Jim Henson was saying, like, all right, I got something. How do I make it better? Just bring in a bunch of people who you love and are talented and just make it better and better and better.
Well, and one of the challenges with an original is sort of why? What's the point of the show? What's the show about really? Because when you're dealing with like an IP, the question is why? Is because, well, there's a built-in fan base, right? There's clearly Dark Crystal is good because it was good before. Clearly Lord of the Rings, people like it. Make another one. Yeah. And so that's the first hurdle to clear. And I think people just liked the idea of older folks fighting monsters who are trying to steal their time.
Right. And I had to say that when I very first heard rumblings of just the basic synopsis of what the show was going to be about, I thought, how refreshing to have a show about adults and not any sort of diss or at all to any other shows where, of course, we want, future generations to relate to it and, to connect to it. But how nice to see this generation, the generation ahead of us represented and made protagonist. And it's kind of not common right now, I feel, in a world where we're kind of casting a lot of the same Chris's in everything right now. It's really nice to see.
I do love a good Chris, though.
I do as well.
Well, thank you. I think Tess, I want to shout out like some other shows that like are playing in this area, right? Because I think there is an acknowledgement that we're living longer. We're having more adventures as we get older, that it doesn't look aging, I think, the way it was kind of old, the way we showed aging, and so that's changed. Yeah. But I think one of the things we try to do is like not make age the monster. I think in a lot of these sort of genre stuff that play on this, it's like a young person looking at old people and going, gross. And we didn't ever want to do that. We wanted them to be heroes. We never wanted to make fun of them. The folks who live in the manor, we never wanted them to be like other or scary. There might be moments that they're this or they're that, but they're people and they can have the full brain and they can be heroes.
Right. Exactly.
They can have their moment and help through joy. They're not scared in that moment. They're joyful. Sam's emotional when he sings karaoke, but they're joyful. And that was important to us all the way through.
We also wanted to include some of the realities, warts and all, of, things that get harder. Your knees hurt more when you're running after monsters or running from monsters. So that's part of it too. We didn't want to sidestep that reality, but we also didn't want to present that as a limitation or the defining character trait for that person. Because at the same point that, yeah, man, your knuckles do hurt a little more. And also, what am I going to do about this much younger guy who just fell in love with me? That's part of it too. What am I going to do about an affair, or, my daughter's bothering me, my father's bothering me? It's all part of it, but the age is part of it too.
I love the way that it paints this picture of reaching those, I'll just say golden years, because we talk about that theme a lot. And which the way that I squealed when it started playing,
right?
Because I am just an enormous Bowie fan, so any excuse to throw him into any needle drop, of course, was
Nora
very
Felder,
appreciated.
man. Nora Felder.
Yeah, Nora.
Yeah, props where due. Very, very good needle drops in this show. Excellently done. But I will say, to illustrate those golden years as a time to sort of be excited about, in the sense that the adventures don't have to stop, they just change. The adventures don't end, they just transform in the way that they have over the course of your entire life. It's just another transformation. It's just another type of adventure that you can have, whether supernatural or otherwise, right? But it sort of creates this inviting picture of, like, even in sort of these so often demonized ideas of getting older, just like you talked about, these ideas that we think, like, oh, I can't imagine ending up in a home. But we have this idea of that as like this other thing that we can't relate to until you've had somebody in your life go through it, until you've, been shown a story that paints it in a light that is not only real, but emotional and complex, and, like you said, not just villainizing it. It's very important, I think, to show that right now, especially since a lot of people in my generation and your generation are now having those experiences in our life where we have family members who are entering that chapter of their life, and we want to be able to go along with them on that adventure in a more like informed and empathetic way. And I think the show is doing a lot for that. It's really great to.
We wanted Jenna Malone's character was so important to have that point of view. And it's funny how many people, when they read the script, came into it through her point of view.
No matter what their age.
No matter what their age, because we have so many people have that experience of their parent, of as they age, and of feeling like, what I wish for my grandmother and the older people in my life are adventures, right? And they can be scary, and they can be all those different kinds of things. Yeah. But that's what you hope for. But yeah, I mean, the manor is based on real places. That is a thing, more in Europe and Scandinavian countries, of building these places for memory centers for people to make them feel safer. That's it. It's just to make them feel safer. I mean, the story about the bus stop is real and based on real science of keeping people safe.
And at the end of the day, isn't that the goal we are all attaining for? Like, after all of the battles that we fight in life, isn't really the gray haven we're looking for at the end is just to be safe, to feel comforted, and to be like, you did it. You can now relax in a cycle that feels like home to you, or a new adventure that feels approachable in a new way.
And respected.
And respected. So important.
And so that was really important to us in this show. Nobody's the butt of the joke.
Right, exactly. I wanted to share with you, as my husband and I were watching it, we had a really great moment where, my husband is an engineer, and he connected with Sam immediately, even though he's 40 this year. So not quite golden, but already
it sneaks up on you. Before you
right, exactly. And there were a couple of moments where I go, the part where he's taking apart the stuff, trying to figure it out. He's rebuilding things. He's trying to teach others, like, the science that nobody understands. And I go, that's 100% going to be you. You're already almost there. And he goes, God, I can't wait.
You know who did a lot of that, like the taking apart. So what's crazy about that scene where he like hacks his own bracelet
Right.
Remember James Seamus? So James Seamus was one of the writers on the show, consulting. James Seamus is a legend.
Oh my
I mean,
God.
James Seamus,
Crouching Tiger,
was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, a lot of Ang Lee's films.
Ice Storm. Get out of here.
He's never been like on a staff. I mean, it's crazy that he agreed to do this and come work for us. Like, who the heck are we? And he was so kind and generous and talented and lovely. And he's an older gentleman, certainly very spry, but he figured out how to hack that thing. Everything you're seeing there is real, and it's based on James Seamus, the man who wrote Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, did the same thing that your husband is probably going to do, and Sam did. He went down the rabbit hole.
All right, how do we do it?
And he came back in. He was like, "Here's how you hack." He's like, the guy's got like eight. He's like got every award.
Yeah.
He runs Columbia Films grad program,
Yeah.
and he comes in. He's like, "I figured out how to hack a thing."
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Man,
and so
that
it's
is one of our favorite movies ever. So that brings a lot of joy to my heart.
He's a delight.
Really
Hello,
cool.
James Seamus. If you ever hear
Hello,
this,
James. That's amazing. I want to talk about the characters, talking about, Sam and the relatability. The fact that I feel like one of the things that you two excel in, it shows in your work across the board. You're really good at building a party for a good campaign and creating, a bunch of different characters in an ensemble that work well together and bounce off of each other in a way that feels very believable but compelling. Who jumped out at you first as you're in your early stages of coming up with, fleshing out the story of this show? Was it kind of a character's first process and then built a story around that? Or was it a big, like a concept that came to you and then you started coming up with the characters along the way? What was that process like of creating these?
I think
these
the
humans?
concept was first. Retirement community, monster who steals time, unlikely heroes band together. And then pretty quickly it was, okay, but who are these heroes as individuals, as specific characters, to make sure that they didn't just become, trite. And then you start with the question, what would you do with the time you have left? And making sure each character has a different answer to that question. In Dark Crystal, we really thought about the 3 layers of knowledge. Brea knows this level, the ruling class, and Rian is on the streets and he's action, and then Deet is close to nature. And so it's about, if that's a show about secrets and learning the truth, then who knows what at the beginning and how do they come together? So then if this show is about what do you do with the time you have left, each person has to have a different perspective on dying, a different perspective on living, a different perspective on living in the Boroughs. And so that way their crew is diverse and interesting. They all have a different perspective.
but we knew, unlike Crystal, so Crystal had the 3-tier drop you into the world. You had to learn a lot of world. This one had less world to learn, but it was still very specific. And so we made the choice of let's follow Sam. Really, he's our eyes and ears for the first episode. And so you meet all the other characters, but only sometimes glancingly. Like Wally's only in, sort of comes in pretty late structurally in it all. But you meet them. And then it was really episode 2 to us was where you show that they're not quite what you thought, right? That's the flip episode where you realize this person's having an affair and this person seems very cavalier about their own mortality, but actually is fighting it a lot. And so everything we set up, you sort of undermine. And then from there, structurally, we thought of it as if Dark Crystal was a road trip with 3 storylines, this was a Scooby Gang.
Yeah.
So each episode, you're introducing a new person, join Sam on his quest. So episode 3 is Wally, episode 4 is, I don't want to give anything away. But yeah, so that was the idea of structurally how we'd sort of put the season together.
Yeah, and there are some subconscious structural parallels too. Dark Crystal season 5.
I don't know that they're. I don't know season 5
or
No.
episode. Oh, they don't know about season 5.
Yeah, I was like, don't start.
Wait.
And I would say I don't think they're all that subconscious. I think they were conscious, but yeah,
I was thinking it.
yeah, We're playing. We're not. We're definitely playing on thematically some of the same things. Totally different show, totally different everything.
Of course.
But there's some themes in common that I think are real things that Will and I think about in terms of time, in terms of the idea of rebellion. I mean, they call themselves the Grey Rebellion in this show. The show was called Age of
Rebellion.
Resistance. Is the
Right,
age of
exactly.
It's not so far off, and the idea of how we sort of drain the life out of people is something I'm particularly when it comes to like corporations and work and all that stuff of like dignity. So those are themes that are really important to us that keep finding their way into the things we make.
Yeah, parents and children, that was big in Crystal, and Sam and Claire are at the heart of the show.
Yeah.
We like what we like.
We like what
Exactly.
we like.
Well, also it's because it's relevant. As long as these things continue to be relevant and important stories to tell that humans need to hear and see represented, it's important that we take that helm and tell those stories and provide that service, really. So which of the characters started coming alive first for you during this process as you're writing, as you're shaping your story? What characters were the ones like that immediately right off the bat were like, I cannot wait to write more about this?
My recollection, and forgive us because it's sort of in the throes of like how long ago it was. My recollection is that Sam was first, and then everybody else came really fast. Because we just started coming up with answers to like, what will you do with the time you have left?
Yeah, everyone's vibe came pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Judy's backstory changed the most in development. What did she really do before the Boroughs? That had more back and forth. What's Art's level of silliness? I think in an early draft he was a little bit overclocked with the comedic, and we had to get that balance right. But pretty much.
But it was pretty fast. And I do know that like Wally was one that came together really fast up front and we struggled with in the end. Was finding that balance of how much does he start to get seduced by the bad and how much, because I think we had an idea earlier on that he got way more quote unquote evil.
Well, I guess he'd be sort of like our Celadon, right?
I was literally, it was about to come out of my mouth. I was like, oh, a Celadon arc.
Yeah.
Fun.
It was much more that.
Celadon went real dark, and we realized Wally couldn't go that dark because we really needed Wally to come back. We needed him to be welcome back, forgiven.
Because we love him immediately.
Right.
And that would be heartbreaking.
And just people didn't believe it. Like there is something that happens when you like create a character and then they start to read and they get more scripts in and you get to this big turn and people just sort of went, I don't know, there's just something in they're like, they didn't like it. And that's it's funny when you hear from a couple of people like, I just didn't like that. And you kind of go like, oh, I think we broke the character.
Yeah, because Celadon started out so tough. Yeah. And so when she gets tougher, you're like, But
I saw that.
But the first thing Wally says is, to Sam, I can see that you're feeling anxious about this party. I'll go in with you and make you feel better.
Yeah.
Right.
We meet him
that's
in a
not
moment
a Celadon
of empathy.
move.
In a moment of empathy, that's right.
Yeah.
And it's even in episode 2, you discover, okay, he's not as okay with his own mortality as you thought, but he's never cruel or willing. He's always about saving people. So we had to find that, but it was sort of a balance. And what's great about Dennis O'Hare is that like he wanted to he'd go darker. Does that make sense? Like I don't know if you ever watched like True Blood or any like he'll do it, and so finding that balance of like back and forth. But he has a scene in episode 8 where he sort of erupts and he says, and that's the angriest take, which I think you and him had talked about doing, and you were like something was about to happen. I remember you came back, and that's the take we ended up using, which was the harshest by far. Is the one that we used.
Yep. We decided let's try one vicious.
So we let it kind of come through there at the end in the moment where he sort of pushes back on them, but we definitely softened that transition.
And well, I think too, part of what was probably having people go, "Ooh, I don't like that. Let's pull back on that. Let's adjust that," is because I think it was very easy while watching the series to sort of assign to each of the characters, each of the Scooby Gang, with someone that you know. And I feel like everyone has kind of had that friend who is a lot like Wally or known someone like him. And so to see him fall to a certain extent means you're sort of imagining that person, doing that. And that's really hard. So in a way you're finding in a way to tell that story ways that you could see people, having those arcs, because no human is perfect. No human is 100% good 100% of the time. We're all going to have those times when we question who we are authentically. And you want to show that in a way that's authentic. I know you mentioned some of the inspiration for Sam from people that you knew about, from stories you knew about from other people. Was that true, do you think, of all the characters across the board, where you were taking from people that you knew in real life, people in your families, people, your friends, like, were these, or just stories you'd heard maybe, like, how much of that was informing?
Sam's a lot my grandfather. What's funny about the other characters is that they're sort of blends, I would say. And even Sam is really a blend. There's just something about the way he stands and walk. My grandfather was also an engineer for Northrop Grumman. He literally had Sam's job. He had that toolbox. He has that. She calls him "you grump." That's what my grandmother called my grandfather. So there's a lot of like very specific stuff there. But in terms of everybody else, it's much more of an amalgamation. In some ways, I think Wally is very much Will, if I'm being honest, for good or bad. No. But yeah, it becomes a blend pretty quickly, because then once the actors come in, it's their voices now.
Yeah.
We're writing towards.
Yeah, I mean, one school of thought is you can write out in or in out. So, for Jeff, Sam is based very much on his grandfather, so that's out, in. But I've never met his grandfather, so he can't be based on his grandfather for me. So
Sam's never met my grandfather, I don't think.
Right? So I think about, well, what about that quality do I have in me that I can then be honest about? And so that idea that, they're all just expressions of each other, because that's what we all are. We're all just pieces of the same whole. Yeah. And so, they're all trying to figure out the same thing that I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah. You mentioned a moment a bit ago when you were talking with Dennis about like different ways to approach a scene and like different takes, which we tend to think of moments like that as like, that's a director's role to take on doing that, right? How involved, were there a lot of moments like that for you guys where you got to sort of get in with the actors and like inform the way that scenes would play out, or kind of step in and make sure your hands were in like the shooting process as well?
Yes. So that's always, it's like, it's an interesting balance, because the directors directed these episodes. Sure. But what's tricky is that they're coming in to a show, right? Like Augustine Frizzell, who's amazing. She directed 4 of the episodes. Shout out to Augustine. She's coming into this like machine that's just going. It's going. And she doesn't get very long to prep. And she's got to figure out a million different things, and she brings her voice to it. And so what we're really there as quote unquote showrunners to do is to make sure that every part is going to line up with every part. We had 3 different directors directing 8 different episodes over how many months we were shooting?
I think 130.
So there are times, and so sometimes we would have rehearsals with the actors before the directors even got there, because we had to get the scripts in shape. And there are times on set where we would, always with the director or things like that, but sort of step in and chat. And the trick is to get a bunch of people who respect each other, and you figure it out very quickly. What it is. But, Will and I are on set every day. Yeah. We are those people who are really there every day. That's part of the joy of it for us. And so, that is part of the discussion. It's always, but Ben, Augustine, and Kyle, they directed the heck out of those episodes.
Beautiful direction. Gorgeous direction. Really well done. And then were you always planning on making a cameo, or did that sort of happen last minute? Because don't think I didn't notice that. I another squeal, I went, oh, come on.
So I don't know, the cast, someone figured out that we used to be actors, and they just got it in their craw and just kept saying, you got to do something, you got to pitch that, you got to get in there somewhere. And one day we just relented.
I really think it was that. Like, we really didn't. And there was something that was funny about it that we thought was funny too, because it was sort of like around when Taylor Sheridan was doing it was like big on like Yellowstone. Do you know what I'm saying? And like he's like so cool on that show, and we liked the idea that we would be the opposite. Felt very true to us that we don't save anything.
Yeah.
We're not good at our jobs.
We're easily tricked.
We are easily tricked
lazy.
Immediately because just by laziness. And so there was something, I think I mainly did it for that. I just thought it was so funny that like given our shot to put ourselves in a show, we would make ourselves so useless.
And the closest we'd come to a cameo in Dark Crystal were the Grunaks. Remember the Grunaks?
Yeah, because they were named after us.
And then they died so
And then
horribly.
They got beaten to death and thrown off a cliff. And we were like, thanks,
So we're like,
guys.
well,
So we thought we'd come back with this.
this
as
is
a
better
little
than
thing.
that. But it was so funny because on set, the director had us improv a little bit of dialogue before the scene to sort of get into the scene.
Yeah.
And I realized far too late that it was taking too long. And because we were the showrunners, no one could tell us to hurry
Yeah.
up. And I was like, guys, we got to hurry up.
So it was us being like, we're just going to let these two just talk? We're just burning money. And so eventually we yelled at ourselves and we finished the takes and got out of there.
I did not take it well.
Yeah, but you could see me speeding out too hard at the end of
it's so funny.
these electric
Because
cars.
we're such like A+ students. We want to get the gold star. And like the stunt guy just casually told Jeff, you got to drive a little bit faster than usual to get clear of the shot. And he was like, I'm going to do it. And he guns it out of that scene.
We had to like remove the sound of the car tires squealing so loud.
I did want to mention though, because I thought it was very, very cool when I read about it. Also kind of very much connects to, again, the themes of the Dark Crystal of environmentalism. You were given sort of an acknowledgement for the sustainability of the production of the Boroughs. How much can you tell me about that? Because that's
we are
really
happy
sick.
to talk about it. We just can't take all that much credit. I mean, it was important to us, but what happens is the credit really goes to Netflix, who says let's make this a priority and
So cool.
assigns people, pays people, gives them jobs to do this, to create departments that do this. And then there's people underneath us on our show who actually make it work.
Yeah.
And our hope is that we can find a version where like our DP didn't even know that we had done all these things until she was at the award ceremony where we got the award, where she didn't realize that we've been doing all these things so that they could do their jobs.
Because no one ever had to come to her and say, oh, you can't have that many lights because we don't have that much electricity because we're using a solar battery.
Yeah.
There were never any problems. That was the main thing I wanted people to know, is that it worked. It was easy. The solar generators really are quieter. They really are more mobile. It really does work.
We were, moving stuff around the trucks. I think we were using these new types of electric trucks, and but our base camps were like run through a variety of different power things, and it was cool. And you wouldn't know it from the outside. If you looked at our base camp at any other base camp, you wouldn't realize what we were doing. So it was really cool, and it was a fun award ceremony. And we brought Ed Bigley Jr.
Oh, yeah.
because he's in the show, and he's been doing stuff for environmental forever. So it's like we walked in with a beetle.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like Ed Bigley, everybody, even
like-
Al Gore.
Yeah.
I mean, Al Gore.
Al Gore, the keynote speaker, was like, I'd just like to acknowledge Ed Bigley.
So
Jr.
Ed Bigley, like we're in the room, we meet him. He's very nice, and then he sees Ed, and they're hugging, and I was like, of course they did. They been talking about the environment before anybody else was talking.
It was
about
like going to an Elvis convention with Elvis.
with Elvis. It was so cool, and he's just the sweetest Ed. It's just the sweetest.
Yeah. So incredible. But yeah, among other things, I mean, to be cutting fuel usage by over 75%, that's almost 13,000 gallons of fuel that wasn't being used compared to a lot of other film sets. Using solar, man, you're so right. Everyone should be doing it. There's no reason not to be incorporating solar energy on a larger scale. And this shows a really good testament to that.
We had a person whose job was just to do that.
And I think there was a time economically, in terms of infrastructure, where it was harder or more expensive. And it's just not true anymore. It's not harder. Netflix was very good about investing into their home base lot. There were plenty of chargers. It really can be done.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of credit, and just another reason to be grateful to Netflix for not only greenlighting another amazing puppet show and trusting you guys with it, but then also to be making a show that with names like the Duffer Brothers and the cast that it has all over it, the shining stars, and then to also be a beacon of setting a standard for environmentalism, and to be acknowledged for that, really, really cool. So
it was fun to accept the award, and it looks good on my mantle, but I really feel like Above and Below should get the credit. And the only reason it's not on
you're
Will's,
part of.
Yeah, Will's got kids, so he can't have it on his mantle.
No.
But no, it's funny because we talk a lot about, between Will and I, of like how weird our career is, and Dark Crystal was like the first big thing that we did. And so it's really nice to have you here to sort of realize that it's, and we'll talk to you on the next thing, or maybe on season 2 or whatever it is. But
we thought we'd be comedy writers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then when Dark Crystal was the first thing that got made, all of a sudden we were genre guys. And we like being genre guys.
We were so spoiled. So part of the thing that we would do is like we would do this puppet show where like you could build all the characters. And we're like, for our next show, let's just get like the best actors in the world. And so we just like called, and then they did it, and they said yes. And so I just keep thinking of like, man, we are proof that privilege is real, and that you can fail sideways sometimes in a really lovely way.
Yeah. Hashtag puppet privilege.
Hashtag puppet privilege. But we were like, I just want to do a show where people can pick things up and use their fingers, because from the production of like rigs for every hand, everything.
We've got them picking up spoons all the time.
Yeah, we're just like throwing spoons, and it's just people picking stuff up for fun.
All right, phalanges go off.
Yeah, that's us showing off.
Just wanted to congratulate you. It is really, really cool to sort of, I don't want to say come full circle, because that implies a completion, because there's so much more ahead, I'm sure. I cannot wait to see what else I see your names on in the future. And I will always think like, man, that story started with the Dark Crystal. And that is just...
And I meant it, and we'll maybe find another time to talk once more people can watch. So I do think Dark Crystal and Boroughs and some ways talk to each other. And that's part of just the nature of art, right? You make a thing, and then you make the next thing, and then it all builds on these ideas and these things. But I do think they're all part of one conversation. So
well, and fans of Age of Resistance should pay close attention to episode 4 of the Boroughs. I won't say what exactly, but there is a moment where it turns out puppetry skills were very useful.
Yeah,
I was doing my best to not say anything about that, but my gosh.
Yeah. We actually we used some literal tricks in 4 that I stole from the Dark Crystal, of those shadows and how we did it. And I was completely inspired by Dark Crystal. And it was funny because even like some of the special effects people were like, I'm not sure that's going to... I was like, trust me.
Everyone thought we were crazy except for us and the people who actually physically did it.
Yeah.
They were like, yeah, no problem.
That'll work.
Just had to do it.
Yeah. But it worked. And so that's just 100% what we learned on Dark Crystal. So, we'll keep learning stuff.
Thank you so much for keeping it alive. Thank you for coming back to chat with us. For all of our friends listening, make sure you tune into The Boroughs on Netflix. Premieres on May 21st. That is this Thursday as of right now. And it is so easy to watch every single episode in a matter of a single day if you have the time. And then it's very, very highly rewatchable as well. So I am very, very excited to endorse and promote it, and just to see your names on your own baby, your own sandbox. Congratulations to you guys, and thank you so much for chatting about it with me.